So we're doing this like pat, rub thing with live streaming in here.
You were rubbing both.
I know. See. Great, so welcome everybody. This is Jeffrey Van Dyke. Welcome to everybody here. Welcome to the live streamers. If you are live streaming, I want to invite you to say hello by typing in your location into the live stream chat. Dina Crowder is our lovely live stream hostess. And so she'll be engaging with you. She's on mic tonight, so she'll be able to share your questions with me while we move through this evening. So we're going to be as much with you wherever you are in the world as we are here in Santa Monica, California. I want to start by just sharing a few things, and we'll do a little drop in and dive in. We are at the Hall Center right now, and this is my dear friend Prudence Hall's center. Dr. Hall is one of the foremost regenerative medicine specialists in the world, a bioidentical hormone replacement therapist, and her mission is really to bring people fully alive. And the reason I do it here, other than it being a gorgeous space, is because we really share a mission for bringing people out into the world to share their gifts at a larger and larger level. So just a little note, if you are looking for some support on the body side of things to bring your work out to the world, check out thehallcenter.com, and you can get introduced to Dr. Prudence Hall. I do these events. Hi, welcome, coming in. I do these events once a month. We didn't do one last month because I had my niece's birthday. And as much as I love you all, that took precedent. But we do these the third Thursday of every month. And the intent for these dialogues, for these conversations, is really to push the envelope for what's possible for us as leaders. So often, I think, we're trying to do good. We're trying to be good people. And sometimes the desire to be good people and to do good in the world gets in the way. Gets in the way of us bringing out our fire, bringing out our passion, bringing out something that's maybe avant-garde or that people don't talk about in proper company, which you're meant to talk about. And so these events are designed to help us collectively stir that pot and open up to a bigger level of service in the world. My background is in a mixture of ostensibly marketing, but most people when they meet me say, okay, gosh, it's more like a mixture of marketing and spiritual development and psychological evolution. And that's really more the truth of it. Tonight's topic is about applied faith. And we'll get into that just a minute after we drop in. But I found it really telling that that was the topic for this month, given what happened in Orlando, because it was a topic that came to me before that. But it definitely applies to where we're at in our world, and I think why we're being called more and more to step up and step out into our leadership in the world. I want to tell a little story, and then we'll do a little moment of meditation and drop in, and then I'll bring some more stuff out, and then we'll coach some people. By the way, the format is I talk for a little while, and when I do these, I intentionally don't prepare. Other than preparing my consciousness and my presence in this room, these events are the place for something new to come through. And so I'm intentionally not trying to tell you things that I already know. And instead, creating a space where collectively, new stuff can come through for all of us. And you here in LA are as much a part of that as you on the live stream are a part of it. And I know there's a big audience around the world that watches the recording afterwards. And I believe that you too are a part of what comes through. So I talk for roughly 30, 45 minutes. I'm trying to keep it a little smaller thanks to a suggestion by a friend. And then do a little bit more coaching. And so what I love to do is to get into a dialogue, to answer your questions, to get some people up here on stage and do some coaching, because I think topics are neat, they're interesting, but what's more interesting is applying the information. And so given that the topic tonight is applied faith, we're going to apply it by putting some people on the hot seat and doing some live coaching here up front. Good. So I'm going to go into just a little meditation and a blessing for our country and our world and us. And we'll dive in from there. Cool? Good. So as we begin this evening, I know that something fresh and new is wanting to appear for us, that it's brewing even now, and that our collective intent for our own evolution and the evolution of our world is putting all the ingredients necessary for what we collectively need into that pot. I ask that our eyes be cleared, that we see clearly, that our ears be cleared, that we hear clearly, that our mouths be cleared, that we speak the highest truth. I ask to be available to be a receptor for that truth and to deliver it with the greatest amount of love and impact. In this time of sorrow in our country, and confusion and anger and grief, I also just ask for a loving presence, for benevolence, for grace to fall upon us, and to show us each what's here for us to learn, what's here for us to bring, what's here for us to speak. Perhaps in response to what happened in Orlando, perhaps in response to what's inspired us in terms of our service and our growth in this world. I also, just as we take this time to collectively focus our intent, I want to take a moment and send love and prayers and grace to those directly affected by whatever friends and family and brothers and sisters and perhaps moms or dads in light of what happened in Orlando. I know that there is more truth to be revealed. And so may this evening be a conduit for that truth to come through, to come out, to be expressed in this world, and to help us all collectively evolve. So it is. Welcome. Come on in. I have a guy I love listening to, a musical theater writer named Jason Robert Brown. I actually sent a little email out about him today. He wrote a bunch of different stuff. He wrote Carousel, he wrote Songs for a New World, he wrote The Last 5 Years. And he's just a really thoughtful, interesting artist. And he sent an email out to his list yesterday. And the email basically said that he was wrestling with what to do in response to the shootings in Orlando. And he felt kind of trapped within action because he didn't know, like, what can I do? What can you do? What can any one of us do? And he posted it on Facebook, and his friends responded and basically said, what you can do is your art. Artists respond with their art. Right? And he put out a new song. A Song About Your Gun is the name of the song. And that really inspired me. Because I think oftentimes we look at things in the world. Now this, like as a gay guy, as an American, this affected me very deeply. And it was interesting to watch my response to it. Because I know when other tragedies happen in the world, there's times when I'm like, I know that that's bad, and I feel like I should be affected, but I don't feel affected, per se, right? And so I can intellectually go, oh, I have a response to that, but I don't have a visceral response to it. But this I had a very visceral response to. You know, as a kid who grew up in my 20s going dancing, 3 nights a weekend, that easily could have been me in a different city. And so it had a really personal impact. And I think there's something purposeful about when we have those experiences that feel personal. Because not everything's going to feel personal. But there are times when it does. And those are the times of inspiration. Those are the times when instead of just going into our rage or going into our confusion or going into numbness, that we can fuel how it impacts us personally into our art. And in this room and in my community, I consider our businesses our art, among other things, right? That when you're living your calling, your business is your art. I saw a documentary years ago of this modern dancer, a German female modern dancer. I can't, what's that? Pina. Yes, Pina Bausch. Oh my God, that movie impacted me. I remember sitting in the theater and every movement was purposeful, was thought through. The amount of time in rehearsal they put into the slightest movement of the body and to correct the slightest movement so that it was what it was intended, so inspired me. And I thought, God, what if business was like that? What if we marketed that way? What if each word in our emails had that amount of attention and intention? I don't think it's really possible or practical at the speed of business, but if we can take the idea of it and apply it to our work, that's art. And I think that when tragedy happens, that's often what inspires art. I mean, sometimes beauty inspires art, but more often than not, it's tragedy, it's hurt, it's struggle. You know, and my entire body of work, as you know, is about the relationship between our wounds and our contribution. And so as we get into this topic of applied faith tonight, I want to start with this idea of using what we've got. Whatever that is, using what we've got to fuel what's possible for our contribution. And the more personal you are, the more personal something is to you, the more personally you're affected, the more potential is to take that energy and fuel it, funnel it. And I think oftentimes the times when we don't know what to do is we don't know where to funnel the different emotions, the energy. We don't know where to put it. And when I got this email from Jason and saw his new song, I was like, yes, we all have our art. We can all funnel it there. And when I get little head twitches, my friends call it my spiritual Tourette's. So just so you know what that is when I'm getting a little intuitive hits. And what I was just checking in on was, what does this have to do with applied faith? As I'm talking, what does this have to do with applied faith? And what they're saying is that we apply our faith to everything. That we can apply our faith to everything. One of the things that's at the foundation of my body of work is that there are no problems to be solved. That there's just more truth to be revealed. And that all problems are a fragmented expression of a whole, complete divine truth that wants to be revealed. And that the problem, when it expresses, when it gets loud, when it bangs on our door, is saying, hey, I'm ready to have more be revealed here, right? If it didn't bang on the door, we wouldn't know about it, right? I think of it like an automobile. When your brakes are working just fine, you don't think about them. But when they start to squeak, you go, oh, something wants to happen. And I can either pay attention and probably save a lot of money by getting it fixed earlier than later, right? save a lot of pain and struggle by paying attention sooner than later, or I can ignore it and potentially screw my car up in a much more significant way, right? But it's just a notification, right? Hey, time to look here. Something wants to be revealed here. And so when it comes to applying our faith, one of the places to look is what's calling us? Where does it want to be applied? One of the things I wrote the other day about tonight was about the difference between amateurs and pros. And it felt so funny to write those words in relationship to applied faith, right? But when I thought about how amateurs deal with things and how pros deal with things, it totally applied. Because I think most of us, at different times and at different levels, are still growing. We're more in the amateur category of applying our faith. And what I mean by that is there's places in our life where it's easy. It's easy to apply it, right? And usually it's the places where we have reinforcement from our history that things are going to work out, right? There's things that I can do in my applied faith that come very easy to me that might be crazy talk to some of you, and vice versa, right? Tony Marie and I were sitting on the plane last night on our way back from Philadelphia, and I was telling her about how I moved to Los Angeles. And I knew I was supposed to move here. I'd lived for 13 years in San Francisco, and I had a great life there, but I knew I was supposed to move here. And the message kept coming, Jeffrey, you need to be in the broadcast capital of the world, because your work is to work with messengers who need to broadcast their messages around the world. One of the reasons I do this event, even though we have a compact audience in person, we usually have a fairly significant audience tuning in around the globe. And this is one way to broadcast the messages, right? And so when I knew I was supposed to move here, I remember I was working with a business partner at the time, Max, and we were sitting on stage earlier that year in 2013, and our participants were doing an exercise, and he was looking at me. He's like, all right, when are you moving? I was like, this fall. He goes, when? He goes, I don't know, sometime this fall. He goes, by when? I said, okay, I will be in Los Angeles by November 1st, 2013. So I had my stake in the ground. I didn't know how. I didn't exactly know why, except that it was where I was being led. But I knew that I must, right? Or I'll just totally screw the brakes on my life and have a much more severe consequence. The thing is, as it was getting closer, and as I was thinking about moving here and finding a place to live, I kept getting this message. Somebody's just going to show up into your life and invite you to live with them, right? You're just going to like plop onto your doorstep and say, come live with me. And now that sounds crazy, right? Like as a strategy to move to a new city. Oh, be available to the person that shows up randomly in your life and says, come live with me. But it was so clear, right? That was so clear. And I couldn't have made it up. I didn't want to make it up. In fact, I hadn't lived with anybody in years. But it was clear that that was the message. And I also knew that if I went onto online and started looking for places to live, that I'd be screwing around with things, right? It was like, keep your hands away. I did not open Craigslist once. I didn't go onto the MLM. I didn't go onto Zillow. I was like, all right, universe. And here's how applied faith typically works. It works in cascades, right? So message one, a series of messages, move to LA. Second one, by this date. Third one, someone's going to show up into your life and just invite you to live with them, right? Fourth one, at the time, I had a series of coincidences of people bringing up hand analysis. I was I'm friends with this woman named Lindsay Miller, and we were hanging out one night, and she's like, "Let me look at your hands. I've been getting into it." And she looks at it, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know enough. Never mind." Right? But it came up. And a little while later, it came up that a VIP client of mine was speaking at this woman, Beth Davis's event. Now, Beth and I had done joint ventures and stuff over the years. We met in 2009. We were friendly, but you know, that's kind of we liked each other, but hadn't spent a lot of time with each other. And my client said, "Hey, I'm speaking at this event in Arizona. Do you want to come watch me speak?" Now, normally, I would never do that, right? Normally, I'd be like, "No, and if you do want me to watch you speak, you'll have to pay me for that." And it was kind of a 3-day event that normally the only reason I'd go to it at this point in my career was if I were speaking at it. But I just got this funny feeling like I'm supposed to go to this frickin' event in Arizona. And I was already supposed to go to LA, so I had to reroute myself from San Francisco to Arizona to LA. But the first day, I'm sitting in the audience, and there's Beth, and then she has this other woman that I've never seen before speaking with her. Her name is Pamela Landers. She's actually sitting right here. Pamela, I could see, had done the hard work to fall in love with herself. That she really loved herself. And I have a way of claiming people, right? Now I know it's in hand speak, it's my Jupiterianism of being a leader and bringing people into my realm. But I saw her, I was like, we're going to be buds. We're going to be buds when I move to LA, right? So the next night, they have a cocktail party, and Beth calls me over and introduces me to Pamela. She's like, "You two need to speak. You're like 2 peas in a pod." So we sit down, and she says, "So, where are you living?" I said, "I live in San Francisco, but I'm moving to LA." And she goes, "Oh, wow, cool. Where are you going to move to?" I said, "I don't know. Somebody's just supposed to show up into my life and invite me to live with them." Because of course, rational, normal human beings answer things that way. And she goes, "Okay, where do you want to live?" And I said, "Wherever this person lives." Right? So she tells me about some resources and whatnot, and we keep talking. Now, she's the speaker at the event, so people keep coming up and interrupting us and saying hello. And a lot of my tribe was at that event and keeps coming up to me and interrupting us and saying, "Oh, I didn't know you were here, hello, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Honey, let me, we'll talk later, go to bed." And she was like, "No, stay." I was like, "Okay." And keep talking. She's like, "Let's find someplace more private." We talk for 90 minutes. And then she says, "Oh, something about blah, 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 Stephanie Beebe." I was like, "Oh, I love her. Stephanie and I are like this." And she goes, "Okay. Well, since the moment you sat down, I was told that I'm the one that's supposed to invite you to live with me. I have a 4-bedroom home to myself. And I was just waiting for sort of the rest of me to catch up with the direction. And once you said you were friends with Stephanie, that was enough." Right? So I go back up to my hotel room. I was sharing it with a friend of mine, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna live with Pamela." And she goes, "Okay. Where does she live?" I said, "In LA." Said, "Where in LA?" I said, "I don't know. I didn't ask." Goes, "Well, what does the place look like?" "I don't know. It has 4 bedrooms. How much is it?" "Don't know that either. But I'm clear I'm supposed to live there because for months I've been told someone was going to show up into my lap, be plopped into my lap, and invite me to live with them." Right? That is applied faith. And by the way, this was mid-September, and I had an agreement to be in LA by November 1st. I arrived October 26, 2013. Right? So that happens to be an arena where I'm practiced at applying my faith. Partially because I'm used to the universe opening its doors to me. A lot of my friends, if you hang out with me, especially friends who have known me for a long time, are like, "Oh my God, Jeffrey, that's such a you story," right? Like, that crap only happens to you. And what I'd say is, that's an arena where I have evidence that the universe shows up for me. And therefore, it's easier for me than a lot of other folks maybe to apply my faith towards going like, all right, I'm going to free fall, and I know something's going to happen on the way. Now, when it comes to relationships, it's less easy for me to apply faith. I have less evidence of the same experience. And so my ego has more of a static around it, more of a backlog, more doubts, more filters in the way between my guidance and my reality. So we each have areas where I think it's probably easier for us to apply our faith. And then we have areas where it's like, I got nothing. I don't know how to do it there. So one of the things we're going to look at is, where is it easy to apply faith, and what about it makes it easy, A. And then B, where is it more of a struggle, and what are the beliefs you have that are the static in between your listening and your reality? That's one. Now I want to go back to the conversation about being a pro or an amateur as it relates to applied faith. Because I think amateurs tend to apply faith where it's easy, where we have evidence, where it's comfy, where it actually feels nice, like, oh, I love spirit. It takes care of me. It's so lovely, right? But the places where it's harder to apply faith is the places where we can't see how something could happen. And that's usually in relationship to our larger callings, right? When I was writing copy for tonight, one of the things that came through, which I thought was interesting, was that when we have a huge gap between our reality and our calling, that's when we have the largest potential to apply faith. Oftentimes when there's a small gap between our calling and our reality, we can kind of use our mind and go, ooh, I can kind of see how this could happen, and then this, and then I could end up there. And so I can kind of make sense out of it. So it's easy for me to have faith, because if it doesn't work out for the universe to arrange things, I can kind of still make it work on my own, right? And I think most of us, most of the time, play it safe. And God knows our ego is designed to have us play it safe. It's designed to have us feel safe and secure. So this idea of faith is antithetical to the setup of our ego. So this is really a dance, right? This is really this dance between our listening, our understanding, and our action. And how do we get listening, understanding, and action to be the smoothest motion that can just happen repeatedly, rinse and repeat, on and on and on in our life, in every area of our life, right? You've heard me talk about the definition of holy power I have, which I'll just bring in for a quick second. That holy power is the complete expression of divine truth in real time, without hesitation, manipulation, or control. The complete expression of divine truth in real time without hesitation, manipulation, or control. And that's applied faith, all right? My buddy Tim Kelly and I were talking. He said, interesting, underneath that definition, we normally say absolute power corrupts absolutely. But underneath that definition, anything but absolute power is what corrupts. So we're going to look at what the bigger calling is and where you're like, no, yeah, I trust you and all, but not there. I got it, right? Or as what inspired tonight's topic was talking with a new VIP client who had really been struggling to build his business. It kind of went in fits and starts. And when it goes great, and he gets big, $50,000 contracts, and then nothing, and kind of doesn't know why. And as I was listening to him, it just hit me. Oh, you listen for the directive. Oh, this is the what that I'm supposed to do. And many of us receive the what. Oh, I can see the what. And then we disconnect for the how. Right? And he was getting the what. Oh, I see what I'm supposed to do. And in essence saying like, all right, gang, thanks so much. I'll take it from here. Right? And then struggling. Because, and this is really what we know, but we have a hard time with sometimes. There's an architecture to our universe that we can either be plugged into or not. And collaboration happens when we're plugged into not just what we're meant to be doing, but how to do it. In fact, that's the more daily practice of applying our faith. I used to teach collaboration, corporate collaboration, in something called the Collaborative Operating System. And the basic definition of collaboration in that system is that collaboration is having all relevant constituents agree on both the what and the how, right? That you're in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. And a lot of times when we collaborate, we tend to agree on the what, but we forget to agree on the how, right? We don't end up collaborating on how are we going to roll this out. And so then we have all sorts of different ideas about how to do it, and then it blows up and we blame each other because we weren't on the same page. We thought we were because we were aligned on the what, but we weren't aligned on the how. And I think about that as it relates to our calling. That oftentimes we get a call, we get a sense of, oh, I'm supposed to do this thing, right? I'm supposed to bring this message to the world about this thing, or I'm supposed to go work with this audience. I have a woman in one of my programs right now who used to be a professor and has advanced degrees. She was like a professor at Harvard in racial studies. And then became a very well-known professional psychic because, of course, you go from racial studies to being a psychic. And now she has this calling to be a voice in the racial conversation in our country collectively. And she's like, what do I do with that? Where do I start, right? And by the way, since I'm no longer an academic and I'm a psychic, like how is that going to work out? And if we stop there, we're stumped. That's usually where we disconnect from our listening. I can't see it. I can't see how to take these things and apply it to that. And usually that's when our mind goes, I gotta figure it out. I gotta figure it out. I gotta figure it out. Maybe even hire someone like me, right? Please help me figure it out. I need to market this. I need to find a business out of it. Please help me figure it out. And the ego moves into this anxiousness to know. Yeah? Know that one? The anxiousness to know? I certainly know it. The anxiousness to know. And it is the death of faith. It's our willingness to stay in the listening that allows us to continue to apply our faith. That's the only thing that allows us to continue to apply our faith. So tonight, what we're going to do some work on up here is where we disconnect from the listening. And what's the apparatus that has us disconnect? Not even to make the apparatus wrong. Okay, this is, I think, the final thing. Because that's another trick of the ego. And by the way, I'm a fan of the ego. This isn't a bash the ego thing. Spirit versus ego, cool, WWF. That's not what this is, right? This is about collaboration. And so it's looking at what is the apparatus, what's the mechanics of the disconnection. Where does it start? What happens next? What happens after that? And what's the consequence? Because I forget who I was talking to and even who they were referencing, but I remember this thing about balance. Somebody was asking their sensei or some saying or some allegory or whatever, asking their sensei, like, how do you have such great balance? I don't have good balance, sensei. I need better balance. And the sensei says, I don't have better balance than you. I just get back into balance faster than you can. And so I think applied faith is very much like that. It's not about perfection, because that's not the point. And usually the ego goes, oh, I want to set it and forget it. I want to get my applied faith in order, and then I'm good to go. Off to the next thing. No. Right? The practice of applying the faith and getting to balance faster is actually what allows us to deepen our faith and deepen our relationship with our guidance. And I believe that as we do this, we become more and more capable to do things we could have never imagined, to have impacts we could have never seen, to have doors opened we didn't even know existed. And if we are the ones we've been waiting for, if we are leaders of the new world, so many of us go, how could I have impact? I'm not the president of this country or the leader of that company or the head of this NGO or whatever. And it's like, okay, you might not be today, but if you listen and allow, doors will open that you didn't even know existed. And before you know it, you just might end up there. All right, cool. So before we dive into Q&A, we're going to see just kind of what's bubbling up, what questions do you have, or just comments of like, oh, this is showing up for me, both online and in the room. So for the live streamers, how is this landing? What's bubbling up for you? What are you noticing? What questions do you have? Go ahead and type them in, and I'll be checking in with Dina, and she'll be sharing your voice with us. And Dina, now or check back in with you in a few? Perfect, good. So in this room, and by the way, I use this not so much because we need it in this room, but because we need it for the live stream. Great. Pamela.
I just wanted to add a piece to the story about you, the way that we connected and you living with me. And
oh, I have a piece to add too. Go ahead.
If I didn't have the faith, it wouldn't have worked. So it was a both and.
Yeah.
It wasn't just your applied faith, but it was mine, because I knew, like you said, in about 2 minutes after I'm moving to LA, oh, he's supposed to live with you. But I needed to get to know you a little bit, because like you were a complete stranger. So on the personality level, I just needed a little time. But that was an important piece, that we both were trusting and both having faith.
I love that.
And it feels important because you could have faith, but if I didn't, it would have been a non-conversation.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just one other thing that I remember is that morning, because that was in the evening, that morning I did a meditation, a half-hour meditation, and I remember in that meditation kind of like going up into the grid and going like, and putting the voice into the grid, like, all right, whoever you are, because I was really getting anxious. It was mid-September. It's like, whoever you are, I'm ready to meet you. And I just put it there and let it go. And it was like 10 hours later, right? Now my guides are also saying, yes, and we were guiding you to put it there to get yourself ready for that conversation. So that's how this grid work works, right? That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm just sitting here. It's on?
It is.
I'm sitting here laughing because I was at that event.
Uh-huh.
And I remember us meeting at least 12 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And when I walked in to start doing this, the first person I saw that I recognized was Pamela. And Pamela and I have been the two most consistent people here along with Mom. So I'm just in the humor of the synchronicity of knowing I saw Marcia. I went to Marcia's event. Mm-hmm. I finally understood what the wound was after all these years and years and years. Mm-hmm. So I'm just sitting here, just absolutely enjoy.
Beautiful, beautiful. By the way, can you share what you discovered? Willing to or not quite yet?
Yes, I can share that.
Great.
When I was little
Yep.
and a little student, I would get a 98. It was always met with what happened to the other two.
Yeah.
And I had a fellowship or a scholarship lined up to Harvard. And I was in a play my junior and senior year in high school because I'd been transferred into a boys' prep school. And I didn't know that the director of the play was the head of the Harvard Schools Committee in Cincinnati. And even though my face credentials were way better than someone else that got in the year before, he made sure I didn't get into Harvard. Mm-hmm. And I finally gave up being brilliant.
And so the wound is what?
That I denied brilliance for, almost 50 years.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Good. We'll get into that, Clifford. Good. How about online?
Online, the one question is, how do I have faith in my zone of genius? And once I have that faith, how do I connect practically with partners and business people who can help me make it a reality in business?
All right. So one question is, how do I have faith in my genius? And then secondly, how do I align that with opportunities, essentially, relationships, business partnerships, etc. Let me answer the second question, the second part first, and then back up into the first, because for those of you who followed me for a while, know that I've had a lot of business partnerships, and I've enjoyed them. And I will have more probably, most likely at this point in a different format than I have in the past. But I have my eye, just FYI for everybody, I have my eye on it's been a few years since I've done like a big weekend event kind of thing. And I haven't been interested in them because I've wanted to only do it if I were inspired. But I have on my horizon, and I don't quite know the when of it. I'm getting a sense of spring of 2017. Something about speaking and storytelling and all about being a master of your message, which will most likely be an event that has a mixture of practical skills of developing your message, developing your story, developing your presence on stage, and the inner development and leadership skills related to speaking about the fear of rejection, the fear of ostracization, the places we hide out or don't want to speak the bold truth that would actually have us be seen in the world as someone unique with a unique voice. What I know, all of my work and my passion is about helping us as messengers become the living example of our message, so that message and messenger are one, right? That we're the living billboard for our message, because that's when we don't have to defend our message because it's embodied, right? You never have to defend embodied wisdom. Just a quick note on this. The embodied wisdom, and we did an event maybe 3-4 months ago about this, but when it's embodied, it's your lived experience. Like, I'm a little warm right now because we have lights on and I'm in a blazer. I don't have to defend that I'm warm. You might not be warm, but I am. And you wouldn't go, no, you're not warm. I'd say, no, I am. And I'd be nonplussed about it. I wouldn't, how dare you tell me I'm not warm? I am warm, right? No, I'm warm. And so when our wisdom is embodied, meaning we've also reclaimed the value of the wound and are living from the gift of the wound, well, now the message and messenger are one, right? So there is probably something coming up in probably the spring of 27, maybe sooner. We'll see. There's a woman that's a brilliant storyteller and storytelling teacher that I adore, and we're so on the same page. And so speaking of partnerships, she's someone that I'm like, oh, well, you could do something cool, Missy. Her name is Kelly Swanson. So let me talk about partnerships. Partnerships are like almost everything else in this conversation of applied faith. It's about following the impulse. Following the impulse, whatever the impulse is. So let me tell you about Kelly. Kelly and I were keynotes at an event together, and I adored her. And I was like, there's something here. In fact, there was a pre-call, I think a week before the event, where the host interviewed her and interviewed us as the two keynotes for the event. And back to back on the same call. And it was amazing how my work around the wound and marketing dovetailed into finding your story for the world. I was like, ooh, and we both got off the call. In fact, she said right after me, she's like, wow, we could really do something together. And in my head, I was like, okay, let me hear, because she hadn't spoken yet. And as she did, I was like, oh my goodness, right? So I knew, ooh, there's some synergy here. It wasn't, oh, we're supposed to lead an event together. I just knew there was synergy. And so I followed that synergy. I followed up with, hey, beyond just speaking together, on the evening between the 2 days, how about you and I go have dinner privately, right? So I followed this synergy and sought to build a relationship, to build some rapport. We had dinner that night. We had a blast. It was amazing, right? And I was scheduled to speak the first day, and they switched it on us. So I was speaking the second day. And afterwards, she was like, okay, not only do I love you, you're a great speaker. If you want to be speaking on more corporate stages, let me know. I'll make introductions. So cool, good, right? And then I followed up and said, hey, why don't we have a little conversation in a few weeks just to follow up? I'd love to get your insights on me as a speaker, and especially from a storyteller's perspective about the stories I told from stage. And if you want any support from me on speaking in these kind of situations, which was not her normal thing, I'm happy to share. So I followed up, and we had another great conversation. And I said, I don't know when this might be, but I feel like you and I could have an awesome time teaching something together. Would you ever be interested in that? And she was like, yeah, I'd do that in a heartbeat. That'd be awesome. I said, cool. Let's just put that in our back pocket. I don't know the when of it, but I'm just like planting the seed, right? And then at some point in the future, I'll probably ring her back up. I'm like, hey, remember that seed? Yeah, we got to start watering it, right? It's time to let it grow. Every relationship I've ever had in this business has come from something like that, having synergy, having interest. And by the way, reaction. Sometimes the reaction is like, oh, right? One of the teachers I'm working with right now around storytelling is a guy named Bo Eason. And he's like such an alpha dude. He was a former NFL player, right? Just like he's alpha. Cool, amazing, but like, And I was like, like I got socked in the gut, like, I don't really like you, but I know I've got to work with you, right? Like he has something for me. And I knew it because of the impulse, the reaction. So it can be like, oh, Kelly, I love you, let's work together. And it can be like, oh, God, I don't like being in your presence, I need more of it, right? And I'll tell you, that's only happened to me twice in my life. The first time was a guy named Tim Kelly. And for those of you that don't know, Tim was my first mentor after Microsoft in this arena. Tim took me under his wings. He changed my life. I wouldn't be here, standing here today without that man. Right? Right. I remember I was at one of Marsha Weeder's trainings, and I walked in, and he was teaching a single day on life purpose. And I walked in, and I was like, oh, like something about his energy. By the way, also officer in the Navy, degree in theoretical mathematics from MIT, 2 people underneath Larry Ellison at Oracle, like another alpha dude. So you see my pattern, right? And it's because they each help me step into more courage, right? And that's kind of my life lesson and my journey. And so sometimes you'll notice people that go like, oh, and they're usually people you have something to learn from. They're usually people for you to hire. Oftentimes people that hire me say like, I don't want to hire you. Or more often than not, they'll be in an event and I'll be speaking and like the whole time my stomach was churning, I felt queasy. The whole time I knew you were saying what I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. It was awful and I loved it, right? Like you'd be surprised maybe by how often people tell me that when I'm out in the world speaking at conferences. Because I'm poking at something that they want an expert to help them through, but it's caused them pain for so long that there's a part that's like, oh, Jesus, I don't want to look at it, I want to look at it, I want to look at it, but I'm ready, let's go, right? So that's usually the mentor to hire. In terms of business partnerships, it's following the path. With Tim, his system glommed onto my brain like an octopus. It made complete and utter sense, the entire body of work, the moment I learned it. And so I just started showing up at all of his events. And maybe 3 in, it was a small event for like Fortune 500 CEO dudes. And I think there were supposed to be 6 there, and it was like a high ticket weekend event. And the way CEO's life goes, 4 of them had something happen last minute and couldn't go. So there was me and Tim and these 2 other executives. And because it was more informal, he would say stuff, and I have a way of seeing analogy and metaphor. So he'd say something, and I'd be like, and I'd see their eyes kind of curl, and I'd go, oh, well, it's like this. And I'd give an analogy. And I'd go, oh, okay. All right. End of day 1, he comes up to me, he's like, so you know you're showing up like a co-teacher, not an assistant, right? And I said, yeah, but it seemed like it was working. He goes, oh, no, it worked. I just want to be sure you know what you're doing. Oh, okay, right? And the next morning, we meet up. He's like, all right, so I went home. I was a little miffed. I checked in with my guides. They were like, yeah, remember that guy or that person you were asking for to start training and expanding this work to? There he is, right? So he came the next morning. He's like, do you want to be my mentee? Yes, great. I will be your mentor. We shook on it, right? And that was a multi-year relationship of me teaching with this man and learning his body of work and opening a school in Israel and training people around the globe, right? And it became part of my business because I went from mentee to co-teacher. So in terms of like the how of building partnerships and whatnot, as it relates to applied faith, it's having faith in the impulse, having faith in the, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I want to meet you, right? I'll tell one other quick story on this. Another woman, after Tim, I built a business with Suzanne Falter Barnes, now Suzanne Falter, called the Spiritual Marketing Quest. Tim was teaching at a Lisa Sasevich event. He was a keynote, and Suzanne was a keynote there. And Tim and I's friend, Liz Marshall, got this little hit. Hey, I think you're supposed to bring Jeffrey to that thing. Very intuitive woman. So Tim checks in. He's like, yeah, I get that. Calls me. He's like, hey, we're getting these hits that you're supposed to be there. You check in. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm supposed to be there. So I say yes. Step one. Step two, a previous client contacts me out of the blue. We hadn't worked together for a few years. And she just was saying, she wanted to check in and say, hey, here's what's happened since we worked together. It's been amazing, blah, 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 blah. She goes, I even just got a personal phone call from Lisa Sasevich inviting me to this event because I named her program called The Invisible Close at some event. I'm like, oh, I actually, as of 2 hours ago, learned that I'm going to be there. So I'll see you there. So I'm there. Suzanne speaks, and she says this line about building a platform, your online marketing presence, that your platform is the 1 square inch you drill a mile deep in the marketplace, right? The 1 square inch you drill a mile deep in the marketplace. And it hit me like lightning bolt. Oh, that's why entrepreneurs have such a hard time niching, because they're scared it's the wrong 1 square inch. What if we could help them get clear on the square inch? Then they could safely and confidently drill a mile deep. And at the time, I was teaching a course with Tim on purposeful marketing and saying, gosh, we need to write a book, but we need like an actual marketing expert to help us with this thing, right? And so I got this hit, like I'm supposed to work with this lady, Suzanne. So that afternoon, after like all the like, oh my God, I loved you speaking, people left, I kind of casually went up and I was like, hey, blah, 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 good to meet you, yada, yada. By the way, I think we're supposed to write a book together. It's essentially how I introduced myself. And she was like, I don't do books, they're not profitable. I said, okay, well, anyway, here's why. When you said this thing, it made me utterly clear about what the real problem is, and I think there's synergy between this purpose work and this platform work, and if we put them together, it could be something really powerful. So we kept talking, and she was very standoffish. Then we went back in and went to the speaker's table, and I sat next to her, and I got a journal out, and I started journaling with my guides. And I was like, what's this about, and who is this lady, and why am, ugh. Well, before I know it, she's like this. Peeking over my shoulder, then she's like, ask him this, right? So she started feeding me questions. I write them down and bring them, and a half hour later, she's like, we need to go back outside, come on, right? And we went on to build a multi-million-dollar business because something in me didn't hesitate with the impulse that like there is something there for me. There's something there for us. And it's crazy talk. I wasn't a keynote there. I was a nobody in relationship to her. I had no right to walk up to her and say, we're supposed to write a book together, lady. Right? I had no right to do that on the physical plane. The mind would say, that's ridiculous. But applied faith says, there's something there. I need to walk towards it. Right? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it would lead to me building a whole nother business. And by the way, her moving from upstate New York to San Francisco, coming out as a lesbian, right? Like, I didn't know any of that was going to happen, that her life would radically change, that mine would, and that we'd build a big, powerful business together. But we did, because I just noticed the impulse and went with it. So that's the lesson there around the first part of that question. That was a long-winded answer. But I do think applied faith is a lot about that. Getting the impulse, not knowing why. I didn't know why the heck I needed to go to Arizona to this event. I didn't know why I was, in fact, that first night I went to Lisa Sasevich's event. Tim and Lisa and I and her then husband sat down for dinner. She's like, oh, why'd you come? And I said, I have no idea why I'm here. She kind of looked at me a little sideways, but I was like, I just know I'm supposed to be here. I do not know why. I did not know why I was supposed to go to Arizona for this event that I would have never otherwise gone to, except for the impulse. So that impulse can lead to every door opening there is for you. And if you try to push it without the impulse, chances are the door will be locked. Right? If you are students of human design, a vast majority of humans are either generators or projectors, and generators have to wait to be invited, and projectors have to wait to respond, and projectors have to wait to be invited. So there's a lot of waiting for the impulse, right, for a vast majority of us, and we tend not to do that. Or when the impulse comes, our mind says, oh no, that doesn't make any sense. I can't do that. But you can. So the first part of that question was what? I know.
Who's on first? I think you got it. And the only thing that you're going to launch into in the hot seats that's going on in live stream is wondering about the mechanism. You spoke about it.
Yep. All right. Let's get into hot seats.
Whereby we disconnect, we get anxious. 'Cause
Yep.
that's what's going on for me.
I'm getting anxious. Yep.
My mind's going crazy.
All right. So. Yep. Okay. I'm going to face this way in the hot seat. How about if I go here? It's not going to be very pretty, but it will work. Yep. Okay. So let's do a little something here. Here's what we're going to do in a moment is, my wallet, my butt. We're going to bring a couple different people up here, and nothing scary about it. This is our opportunity to have this collective intent focused on you. And if you remember at the beginning when we did our invocation, we know that we are focusing our intent. And so there's something powerful about having that collective focused intent on us together. Things come through for me that wouldn't come through otherwise. Things will come through for you. So first I want to invite you just to get quiet for a minute. And ask yourself, first, what's stirring? And on line 2, just check in. What's stirring? What's stirring? Second, I want to invite you to ask yourself, am I one of the people, perhaps, that's meant to be in the hot seat tonight? And third, notice your internal dialogue around whatever answer you got. No, not me. Or, oh, yes, but I'm scared. Or, ooh, I really hope he picks me. I really, 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 really want it. Just notice the dialogue. That's all. And for those of you that are online, as you notice what's stirring, just post online. What's stirring for you? As we'll reference that in a little bit. And take another breath in. And sigh out and open your eyes. So here's where I want to start. I want to bring somebody up where you have something knocking at your door. There's something you feel you're called to do. You feel it knocking at your door, and you're dancing with it, however that dance might be right now, and maybe struggling with what's being asked of you right now. So if that's you, raise your hand. Yep. All right. Come on up. Thank you. And by the way, I know it's a reach, but there is tissue behind you if we need it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. And could you share your name once again?
Kianga.
Kianga. Great. Thank you. Talk about applied faith. You were at some other event, and they're like, you need to come to Jeffrey's thing. Is that it?
It's a pretty funny set of, I'll tell them really quickly. You're the man with the magic small car from the parking lot that I dallied in before getting to the late lunch that I just kind of joined. I just couldn't get to lunch. I was like, wow. When the bathroom was closed, my dog needed a walk, I couldn't find my credit card. By the time I finally walked in, I was like, okay, well, where then am I supposed to sit? And I saw the people that were just like opening their menus, and I was like, okay, there. I sat next to Beth, and she was like, hey, what's your relationship to the word messenger? Like, I thought about it, and she's like, oh, I have this event that you might be interested in. Yesterday, I was like, I better follow up with Beth. What's that event? Here's what I think you said to me. Hope that's enough for it to resonate. She wrote back to me last night in the middle of the night and was like, oh yeah, it's happening tomorrow, which I got this morning. I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go to this event. Where I see the man with the magic car and the woman that you mentioned, the client that you mentioned that deals with racial consciousness, we went to grad school together.
Oh, wow. Whoa, that's a whole lot of...
So I was like, it took a lot to get to this seat.
That's amazing. Right. I love it. So first, let's just acknowledge how many things converge that we have no control of when we follow the impulse, right? Like all these different coincidences, the synchronicities that had to add up to you being here right now, right? And that's what happens when you're working with applied faith, that it shows up, doors open, you end up in the right seat at the right time. Good. So now, share with us what's cooking in terms of what's knocking at your door. What's the message that you're getting that's like, you're supposed to be doing this thing that maybe your mind is going like, I don't know how around. Actually, on the middle one, mic on the handheld. Let's just, nope, that was me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, try the other one.
Do I just need to speak up?
Nope, just talk.
Okay. All right. Maybe a little better. There I am.
And now I'm going to put mine back on, and I think I'm still okay, yeah? All right, cool. Good. I'm a little hot.
Yeah. So I think I'm supposed to be creating a shared platform, like a cooperative platform for transformational educators, including the one that we know in common. And it doesn't quite make sense because that's not the way this kind of infopreneur or spiritual entrepreneur marketing is going. It's all very solo.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Nah.
that's that's what I got. And I'm
All right.
like, I have plenty of ideas. I've had a life of ideas. I was a fine artist before this sort of long transition. And it isn't a call to develop my own kind of course platform, like my own course line. I was also a university professor. I've developed a lot of curricula.
Yep.
This is something about a shared platform, like
Yep.
a shared space.
Yep. Good. All right, cool. So how long have you been getting this message?
In this iteration, probably about 7 or 8 months.
And when it comes through, is there any other additional information that comes with it? Anything about the why, anything about the who, anything about the how, or is it primarily just the what?
No, when I try to sort, what are the edge parameters? What are the criteria? What's the definition of transformational educators within this frame? I can't quite get it, but I can see who fits inside of it, right? So I can see probably 6 or 7 of the teachers.
Yeah.
And they make sense to me.
Yeah. And so by the way, 2 things that are coming up right off the bat. Not so much for you, but for us collectively. The first one is that in my experience, spirit works on a need-to-know basis. And what we're often looking for is more data than we need to take the next step. We're looking for data for the next mile, right? And what we need actually is the data for the next step. And oftentimes, if we had all the information for the next mile, we'd screw up, right? So first of all, we often don't get a lot at once. The second piece is, in terms of Spirit working on a need-to-know basis, is if we don't take action on what we're getting now, we probably won't get any more, right? It's like, oh, you haven't done anything with what I've already given you. Why would I give you more? That doesn't make any sense. Here's what I've given you. It's plenty for the first step. Take that and check back in. Take that and keep listening. Take that and see where it leads you. So in terms of like next steps or the next couple steps, okay, the second thing I was supposed to say. Oftentimes, this is where the collaborative relationship between applied faith and our own skill and ability and consciousness and mind start to converge, right? Where we get the impulse, we get the aha, we get the what, and then we look and see, okay, creatively, using a mixture of our impulse and our own mind and consciousness, what's there? So one of the things that's there for you is, I don't know a whole lot about it, except for I can see the first 6 or 7 educators that this is meant to be a part, that this is meant to be comprised of. In addition to that, do you have any other data or information?
That it's meant to serve a fairly broad audience. And that well, this is more like the what connects the first thing to like the bigger picture thing.
The first thing being what?
The first thing being this platform.
Okay,
Right.
and the bigger thing being?
The bigger thing being a purpose around like diversifying innovation or diversifying creativity so that I can see it connected, but it's like a long way between like this little front end information and like the big C.
All right, cool. So there's something around diversifying innovation. And I love those two words together. They're nice, provocative words together. And we don't think about that much. But once you put the two words together, in my mind, it makes immediate sense. The more diversity there is, the more innovation there can be, right? So that's a beautiful thing. So sometimes we get the very first little bit, and then we get sort of this far off, hazy, mission-y kind of something. Just enough to go, move in that direction, right? So that's good. All right, cool. Third question, so just for us all, the first thing I did is I just mapped out like what's known so far. And for you, especially if you're live streaming, one of the things you want to do is write down, what do I know so far? Because oftentimes we keep all this in our head, right? We kind of think about it and it stews and it marinates, but it's just in our head. And it feels very fuzzy until we actually write down, like, what do I actually know now? What do I know about who it's meant for, about what it is, about what my next steps might be, about what the bigger mission maybe is, that kind of far off place. So what do I know about the near and the far? And what do I know about my relationship to it, if anything, about why I'm the one? And this can be both guesses as well as insight from your guidance. So let's go there next. So step 1, by the way, writing down what do I know now already, both about the near term and sort of the far off vision. And then the second place to look is where do I feel stuck, right? What questions are on the train? Chugga, 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 this is my question, and it repeats over and over and over and over and over and over. What's that one?
How to start.
How do I start? It's the big one, the big how. How. So let me ask you, these first 6 or 7 people, have you talked with them?
Most of them.
Uh-huh. And what's their response been?
Not necessarily about the platform, right? Like,
Oh, I've talked with them because they're my friends, but I haven't necessarily talked to them about the platform, the calling, the vision. Okay, good. So might that be a next step? And here's where the applied faith is going to come in, right here. So what's the excuse to not having those conversations? What's the conversation you're in about having those conversations?
I don't know what I'm inviting them to quite yet.
There we go. And if you had a conversation without knowing what you were inviting them to yet, what's your fear about what might happen?
That I would, that their interest would wane by the time I could loop back with something concrete.
And if their interest waned by the time you could loop back with something concrete, what's the worst thing that might happen?
There's nothing terrible in there.
No. So what's the worst one that you could imagine?
By the time I get back, they would just say,
All right.
no thanks.
So let's just play with this. So you loop back with them. They say, no thanks. What's the worst thing could happen if that happened?
I would move on to other teachers by that point.
Is that the worst thing?
The worst thing. The worst thing is losing my own fear of losing credibility because I don't have something concrete.
There we go. So, and you used to work in the university system?
Yes.
All right. Very good. So the mechanism here is around credibility. My fear is if I do something before I have enough in place that my credibility will be shaken, right? And so that's the beginning of your mechanism where you go, I can't apply the faith, right? I need to have more to ensure my credibility stays intact before I'll take action. And it's where one of the places you disconnect from being able to take applied action in faith, right? So putting, this is so interesting. The phrase that I'm getting is, what's that old Bible thing? Putting false idols before me, false gods, right? And so the false god here is your credibility, right? Saying, my credibility matters more than my calling, essentially. Now, I know you're not saying that consciously, right? That's not like, right? You aren't going around like that with that kind of bravado, right? But that's what's happening inside, is putting your credibility above the calling. So for each one of you, the next thing to look at is, what am I putting above my calling? And you know what it is by looking at what's your fear about what might happen if you took action right now. That is, of course, if you're being called to take action right now. Sometimes you're called to wait and let it stew, right? But what's your fear about taking the next action? I have another client right now. It's so interesting. All of our coaching right now is about patience. Patience. And what I saw for him is that he gets anxious and wants to know, and then wants to move into activity to alleviate the anxiousness. And what he's being called to do right now is notice the anxiousness and then drop in, go into meditation. And so I have a different impulse in relationship to the anxiousness. One is activity, one is quietude, right? And from the quietude to notice what's the deeper wisdom and then move into action from there, which is aligned action, which is much more effortless, has less drag on the system, etc. But it's a really new habit for him because he's so used to alleviating his anxiousness with activity. So for you, credibility is a big thing. Now, this is where we go into the next piece. Am I on 4 next? Was that just 3? I think that was 3. So the third thing, just to reiterate, is noticing what's your excuse in your mind for not taking action? And you know by asking yourself, what am I scared of might happen if I took action, right? What's the worst thing that might happen? What am I scared of might happen? And for you, it's, oh, I might lose credibility. Yeah, on the surface, they might not be around when I come back, but maybe I'll find other people. That's not the real fear. The real fear is, oh, I won't look good. I'll lose credibility if I show up without enough meat, right? The fourth thing is to track that concern back to the wound, because that's really where this is mechanized from, right? So tell me, as you grew up, if you look at your history, where did the need for credibility come from?
Well, I know the answer. Growing up in a really racist context, where I was never the right person to have the answer. So if I had the answer, I damn well better be able to back it up.
Right, right. Otherwise?
Mini versions of like energetic kill shots.
Yeah. So take a breath. So let's just do a little somatic presencing, my little process, around this for a minute. So the fourth thing is tracking it back to the wound. Going, why am I scared of that thing? Why do I have this stuff around credibility? Oh, I had years of little energetic kill shots. And so you have a system, rightly so, developed that says, oh no, I've got to be rock solid so there's nothing to poke at, right? And you probably became a very gifted academic as a result, yes? So that's part of the gift of it, right, is having built a certain level of skill and capacity in response to the wound. Because the wound always gives you something. There's always a gift from the wound. So part of the gift is that you are a very gifted and strong academic. And you know how to build that rock solid argument. But then there's a point in our life when we are stepping out into our calling where we must move from the pain of the wound to the gift of the wound. And it happens when you have the capacity to have a different response to the external stimuli. So when you were a kid growing up, there was no choice but to go, oh, the only way I can see to deal with this is to become smarter, to become stronger, to build my case, ironclad case, right? That's how you had to do it. That was the best opportunity you had. And now, what got you here won't get you there, right? Like that same reaction to the wound will now be your detriment rather than your asset. It's part of what I call your wound's expiration date. And it's when the positive benefit from the wound ceases to produce, right? No more fruit on that tree, if you will, right? And that's when we're really called to go in and excavate the wound so that we can reclaim some lost part of ourselves, bring it back into the whole of who we are, and then step out with all the gifts still intact, but without the reactivity around it, right? So for everybody in the room and online, I want to encourage you to just take a moment and see if you can track back the reaction, right? Up here it's, oh, I won't be credible. For you, all it's going to be something different. Track that to where did it come from? What's the story that produced it? And what's the part of you that gets activated around that wound? And now we're just going to do a little thing I call somatic presencing to welcome back this part of you. I want to invite you to just close your eyes, and everybody can do this. And feel where those tears are coming from. And for everybody in the room and online, wherever the emotion is, feel where the emotion is. See if there's a place it's located in your body. And if it is someplace in your body, see if you can just gently place your hand there in light touch. And now energetically, as if this were a part of yourself, a wounded part with these emotions, say to the part of you that has the emotions, I'm here, I've got you.
Out loud?
You can just do it in your head. I'm here, I've got you. As if you're showing up to yourself. And as you show up to yourself, see if you can allow the emotions to flow in one hand, and in the other hand, notice that you're breathing. Feel the emotions. Feel them as fully as possible. If you cry, you cry. If it's an ugly cry, it's an ugly cry. Just let it go and feel the emotions and breathe at the same time. And it's like patting your head and rubbing your belly, feeling the emotions and noticing, oh, I'm breathing. I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out. And I can feel the emotions, and I can feel the emotions, and I can feel the emotions, and notice that I'm breathing in and out. And continue to feel the emotions. Let them be as powerful as they possibly can be for as long as they can be, while still noticing that you're breathing in and out. And at some point, you'll notice that you can't feel the painful emotions anymore. You can't hold them anymore and breathe. But just keep doing it as long as you can. As long as you can still feel the emotions, feel them, and notice yourself breathing in and out. That's step 2. Step 3, once the emotions begin to dissipate, ask this part of yourself, what do you need from me? What do you need from me? You showed up. You showed up tonight to give me something, to ask for something, like squeaky brakes. What do you need from me? And just take note of what that is. And you might want to go back in and do a deeper dialogue with this part of you a little later on. For now, just take a deep, loving through your body breath in. Sigh out, and allow your eyes to drift open. So what'd you get?
It was really simple. It was just let me come down. Let me come down. Like,
And what does that mean?
Part.
So if you didn't notice, her hands were on her shoulders. Mm-hmm. Let me come down.
Yeah.
And what would that mean?
I sense it's like all the kind of armor of preparation,
Uh-huh.
right? Like to just actually, to come at the creative impulse or to come at those conversations without the kind of warrior garb, right?
I love that phrase, the armor of preparation. Like that's a chapter of a book, right? And I suspect that because this is a new way of doing things and a new business model and something that none of us know anything about, right? That's the thing. When you're creating heaven on earth, when you're heavening earth as a verb, as my friend Martin Root likes to call it, we don't have the blueprints for it. Our blueprints exist, but our only way to get them is to listen, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. But it's not going to look like anything that's been before. So we can't prepare for it the way we've prepared for other things. Because we prepare by going, oh, I know what this is. Let me prepare for it. Right? But this is something different. And I suspect that not only these conversations will require you to let down the armor of preparation, but that the collaborative experience is going to require that over and over and over again among all of you. And if the one friend of yours that I know is any expression of the rest of them, there's some really smart people that know how to prepare and know how to come ready, right? And you're like, no, that's not what we're doing here. I know that one. I got that one. I'm good at that one. But that's not what we're doing here, right? We're doing something else, and it's called exploration. It's called following the creative impulse and seeing where it leads, right? Because that's your next step. That's the only next step. Talking to these people and saying, hey, I don't know what this is. I don't know where it's going to lead us. I don't know much, except that I keep getting this impulse around this thing I meant to create, and I keep seeing you as one of the people that's meant to be a part of it. Do you mind if we have a conversation? And starting the conversation with, I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know the timeline. I'm used to being very prepared, and this is a different thing. Are you willing to have a conversation with me in that container? Right? And then the deeper work is to start to build a new relationship with a part of you that had the energetic daggers and bullets slung at you time and time and time again. What most of us do is we outsource our wounds. And here's what I mean by that. When we can't be with something in ourselves, we try to make other people be with it to try to teach us that it's going to be okay. But invariably they fail, which gives us the opportunity to take these parts of us back. Like if we feel like we're not lovable, well, we'll find people that tell us we're lovable all day long until they can't do it right anymore. And we're like, oh, I can't have you in my life. You aren't doing it right anymore. And you find somebody else that will tell me I'm lovable. Because I don't know it, right? I'm not doing that work myself. I need you to do it. That's outsourcing. And so there is an outsourcing of keeping you safe, saying, I'm not going to ruffle very many feathers. I'm going to stay sort of in a predictable, contained behavior or container so that I don't risk having anybody throw the daggers anymore, right? Which won't work for where you're going, right? However, you have the ability to build a new relationship to this part yourself so that, like, you end up building, this is so cheesy, Teflon love. Right? Like, it's like Teflon made out of love that you have. And then they can say whatever they want. Like, if I told you you had purple hair, you'd be like, yep, whatever, dude, right? Not a thing, where it doesn't become a thing. And so your master path right now is to befriend the creative process, the creative impulse, and uncertainty without fear that you'll get energetic daggers thrown at you for not being credible, right? Where you're actually leading with the bleeding edge of the creative process. And that's very exciting, right? Credibility will come back in, you'll build it, but right now there's a leadership evolution for you to build where you don't lean on that crutch so deeply. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Anything you want to share?
Well, the thing I've been thinking about is just about like the evolution of that that experience, that wound, right? It's actually how I left the academy. I went out and I did some fairly, I haven't had a very safe life, but I went out and I did some fairly daring things that had pretty amazing results. And my university was just basically like, and now we will chop off your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, let's just talk about that for a quick second. Sometimes the establishment kicks you out because you aren't meant to be there anymore, right? And it's painful. Oh, but like you wouldn't be here having this conversation if you were still there, right? And then you wouldn't go to this next evolution. So I want to review what we did for you and for everybody. One, we mapped out what's known currently about the calling. 2, we mapped out what the resistance is to it, right? What you fear you're going to risk if you answer it, right? For you, it was credibility. 3, we mapped that back to the wound to understand where it comes from. And then 4, we did this integration process that I call somatic presencing, to welcome this part of you back in and to know what the next step is. And then 5 is to ask yourself and tell yourself, what's my very next step? The one thing. For you, it's picking up the phone, right? Not just picking it up, because you've been talking to these people. It's saying, hey, there's something specific I want to talk to you about, and it's a creative project, right? And yeah, sometimes we need, for that 5th thing, we need to set some safety parameters for us to take the next step. So for you, the safety parameters actually suggested is setting the context for the conversation where it's not such a risk around credibility. Where if you actually set it up with, I don't know much about this, I don't know the when, I don't know the how, I'm just getting a sense of it and I want to explore it with you. Well, then there's not a whole lot to rip you to shreds about. Not that these people would anyway. But, right, so you're setting the container to create some safety for the next step. Good?
Good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. Questions on that? Let's start online.
No questions.
No
but
questions
they
yet.
are taking it in and enjoying it.
Awesome, cool. So feel free online to type in your comments, to ask your questions. I'd love to hear your experience of that so far. I intentionally kind of mapped out the mechanism because you were all asking, like, what's the mechanism of it? And the mechanism of it is noticing essentially 2 things. One is, what's keeping me from the next step? Oftentimes, we think that's what's keeping us from taking action is I don't know how. I don't know how to make a whole business out of that. That's a whole thing with curriculum and people, and I'm not supposed to do the curriculum, but it's supposed to be this collective thing, and it's different, and I don't know about it, and I don't know how. Because we aren't applying the next step, right? And that's a great way to keep ourselves in inaction. I don't know how. I don't know how to do that whole big thing. Well, of course, you aren't going to know how. I wouldn't know how, right? You'll know how to do the next thing after you have those conversations. And those conversations will probably be very creative conversations that will lead to new ideas. And those new ideas will lead to new conversations, which might lead to new business relationships, which might lead to the next structure, and so on and so forth. So it's really asking yourself, what's my very next step? What's one thing I can do? And then asking yourself, what's my resistance to it? Right? And doing your work to clear the resistance, to get back into faith, and to apply that faith into action. Good? Cool. Questions, comments? We have time for one more. Who is it? Yeah. We're gonna, okay. We're supposed to talk afterwards. Okay. We're supposed to talk right now for a little bit. Come on up.
My English is
I mean, it's good, but I hope you understand me.
Your English is beautiful. Beautiful. What's your name?
Sarani.
Sarani. What a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's bring this over here. All right. So, Sarani, what's the calling?
Well, I am following my calling and I'm doing, how to say, I'm a teacher and I follow that. I created self-growth center
Where?
in Lithuania.
Beautiful.
And it's been already 15 years since I'm following my calling.
Yes.
But there are some things which are not allowing me to flower.
Yes.
So something is stopping.
Yes.
So that's why I thought
Yes.
I would like to.
All right. So here's my first impulse for you. Your center's been around for a little while, yes?
I've been doing 3 years constructions, so it's in 2 months it has to open.
In 2 months it has to open.
Yes.
So this is new.
I had in a different form,
Okay.
but this is now, it's my dream. I made it the way I want to.
Beautiful. So here's what I'm getting.
Okay.
And this is what happens for a lot of us when we've been doing our thing for a while and it's working and we're doing our thing, is sometimes we plateau. And it's like there's a whole bigger vision and a much more expansive expression we're meant to step into. And it's tough for our mind to wrap its head around it because it's like, but this thing is working that way. Why would I screw it up? So I'm curious, what's the vision that I can't do that? What's the vision that you're like, or that might get me in trouble, or people won't want it? There's something bigger for you that I'm even getting is broader than just the center, broader than just the bricks and mortar.
Well, I would like to, my vision is to create a community, the space where people come to get in touch with themselves.
All right.
And to,
Who
yes.
are you supposed to be inviting there that you have not been in conversation with?
Yes, that was my question. And like I'm stuck in a sense that I don't know who to invite. And because I feel maybe I'm not trusting, or I know people, but I don't know how to choose. So I'm stuck in this waiting.
Yeah. So here's what I get about you. I get that you're supposed to be inviting people into this center that don't already speak your language, don't already speak the self-development language.
Oh.
Right? That in America we have a saying that says they've drunk the Kool-Aid.
I don't know what this means.
So that means like, oh, we already all believe the same things and we're all together, and typically we like to surround ourselves with people that believe very similar things to us. And what I'm getting about you is you're ready to speak to people that don't believe what you believe.
Okay.
I'm particularly getting business leaders. Does that resonate with you?
Yes.
And that you're scared that they will think this is fluffy.
Maybe.
Yeah? If you, okay, this keeps coming, so I gotta say it. I'm even getting governmental leaders. I'm really seeing like part of your work is to work with leaders in government and business, but. So first of all, do either of those audiences resonate with you? Does it feel true or
Yes.
not? Yes, it does.
Yes.
And
yes.
when you think about, so first of all, what do we know? Oh, a broader audience, right? That doesn't look like the normal self-development type people. So that's number one. Number two, when you think about working with them, what comes up for you? What's the fear?
So far, I don't feel the fear. I don't know. I'm checking with myself, but well, I feel like I didn't make the step to bring the right message to those people. So I'm on this step where I cannot get the people who would help me to prepare the message or so-called marketing.
Right.
The people, I can see them and I don't have the fear, but now I'm stuck to invite the right people to prepare the marketing. Maybe that's...
Okay, great. So there's some version of like, I don't have the collateral I need. I don't have what I would need to invite those people,
Yes.
and I'm not sure how I would get it,
Yes.
or I don't know who to work with to get it.
Yes.
So that's the second. Third one, right? We're following our process here. Third one. Well, actually, this is sort of 2B, the second part of 2. What's your concern? If you didn't have the right materials, what might go wrong?
Well, I will lose those people.
Yeah.
So they will not become my part of my vision.
And what's the worst thing that could happen if that happened?
So the dream or this project which I'm doing, it'll collapse.
There we go. And if the dream collapsed, what would that mean to you? What would that say about you to you?
So I failed.
You'd be a failure.
Yes, I'll be
Publicly.
failure. Yes.
Yeah, to your friends, to your family, to your community, to your
Yes,
country.
yes.
It'd be a big public failure.
Yes.
Can you see where failure is part of your wound history?
Yes.
Where did that come from?
Now I'm saying logically, I did some work on my childhood issues, so it's very early trauma. Not being able to be born.
Oh, got it. So starting with, I couldn't come out of the womb.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a failure at even entering this world.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm just seeing like, it's been a pattern, huh? I can't get it. I can't birth the thing. And I love that we're talking and you're like, yeah, I have a new center and it's my dream and I'm 2 months away. Like it's almost there. I've almost birthed it, right?
Right.
All right, so here's where I think the stretch is for you. I think the stretch is for you about having it really good. I think you don't yet know how to have a life that is magical, where everything grows and expands beyond your wildest dreams. I think it would be a challenge for you right now
Yes.
to allow that to be so good. Because the wound says I'm a failure. And so I'm also assuming you very well may have a history of having things be pretty good and almost really open up and then having something make it collapse. Whether that's a marriage or a business or whatever.
Not in business, but
All right. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here's where I think this is, because this is your dream,
Yes.
which means this is your baby,
Yes.
right? This is very much related to early childhood trauma, because this is your baby. You know, you had the first center. This is your dream. This is your baby,
Yes.
right? And so this is about allowing a new pattern to emerge.
Yes. Feels very good when you say that.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, around our wounding, part of our wounds oftentimes is not knowing how to let the goodness be there. A lot of my growth in the last few years has been allowing it to be good. Right? allowing. I just moved into a new house, and I love it, right? And I looked back. I was telling Tony Marie the other night. I wrote down a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted in my new place, and I forgot about it. I wrote it about 2 months before, and then I had this. I've been traveling left and right. I had this 1 week to find a new place to live, and looked at it. I was like, that's it. Went and met the guy. Yep, done and done. Move in. The other week, I opened up this document and went through the bullet points, and I swear to you, every single bullet point, check, 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 down to it has a front-loading washer and dryer. Like, silly thing on some level, but I like front loaders instead of top loaders, right? You know, just all these little things, and it's all there. And it's like, how good can you let it be, right? My old business partner, Suzanne, wrote a book called How Much Joy Can You Stand?
Yes.
And I think you're in that place of opening up to really receive how good it can be, right? How much impact you can have in your country, right?
Yes.
Because you can and are meant to work with high visibility leaders. This is not your standard personal growth stuff.
Right. Yes.
And the marketing question will be answered when you allow it to be birthed as something magical.
Yes.
So it's a choice, right? To start on a new pattern, to start a new fractal. And the fractal says, oh, it's glorious,
Yes.
right?
Thank you. It really, I feel it. It's magic already.
Yeah.
Really.
And so, in terms of applied faith, it's first getting into the vision of that magic, to feel it in your bones, to experience it as reality, and then go, okay, now what do I do? What's my next step? What's the applied action? From this consciousness, not from the consciousness that says I'm a failure or it will be a failure, right? And then to do the somatic presencing, I'm not going to do it again right now, but to do something like the somatic presencing around the voice of failure, to welcome it back home, right? To not say, oh, you're not welcome here. Because it would make logical sense to say, oh, I don't want to fail at my new thing, so I got to push the failure out. I can't have that. But actually, when you do that, you outsource the failure, which makes failure be the reality that happens out in front of your eyes. But if you can actually bring the failure into a deeper relationship with your heart, with your body, with your experience, and actually just for a moment, close your eyes. And find the failure. Find where it is in your body. I know I just said we wasn't going to do this, but. And just place your hand there. And just tell it, I'm here, I've got you. I'm showing up. I don't have to be afraid of you anymore. You're welcome here. I know you protected me. And I'm going to do my best to not push you out anymore. But to take your hand as we build this new journey together. Just ask it, how would you like to join me? How would you like to collaborate with me? What role do you want in this journey? And then just listen. When you hear something, just shake your head. And thank it. And take a breath in. And sigh out. Allow your eyes to drift open. And so what role does it want to have? What part does it want to play with you?
Somehow the word came sensitivity, to be not egoistic but sensitive.
Not what?
Not egoistic, not more but more sensitive to environment, to people, to myself.
And as you imagine inviting governmental leaders and business leaders to join you and have this sensitivity, how do you imagine that will impact your ability to connect with them?
Sensitivity also with the truth.
Yes.
So also to inspire the truth.
To inspire
the
the truth.
truth.
Beautiful. Good. So all these parts, they've played a role for so long, but it doesn't mean they can't play another role. We've got to check in and ask, right?
Yes.
But this is no longer saying failure is not an option, because then failure is inevitable, because you're outsourcing failure. It's such a, sorry my French, but a mind, right? It's so screws with your mind to say, oh, if I say failure is not an option, failure is inevitable. But if failure is an option, if it's okay, then I can have a transformation around failure, and then my life experience will be different than it's ever been. So this is getting ready to, the phrase that's coming is so silly, but to play with the big boys. Because you can. Like, I have no doubt that you can. And you actually, there's a significant hand you are meant to play in changing that country. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Now when I look at you and I hear this, it feels true.
Yeah. That's applied faith. Because what right does she have to say, oh, I'm meant to have a significant impact in changing Lithuania? What right? Right? Our mind goes, what the heck am I saying? And so applied faith is beyond logic. Right? Applied faith is just feeling resonant truth and going, wow, that's wild, but that's true. What's my next step in having a hand in evolving that country? Oh, it's being honest about who I'm actually meant to bring into my new center. Oh, got it. And then there will be next step, and then there will be next step, and a next step. And your big journey, I keep getting, is to allow it to be good. To see. And in a lot of countries, and a lot of places, in Australia, they call it the tall poppy syndrome, not rising above other people. That it's a bad thing to kind of have more than others or whatever. And I don't know if that's a thing in Lithuania or not, but it kind of is in general for humans. We like to commiserate on our failings more than we do praise our successes.
Yes.
And so there's something about being willing to set the bar high and live there. And you can do it. Okay? All right.
Thank you so
You
much.
got it.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Can you hug? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. All right, so we are going to wrap in just a minute. Let me just say a couple final things. First, I want to really acknowledge both of you for coming up and sharing yourselves with us. We can't do this work and have our collective experience without you. So my hope and my prayer is that you got something out of it personally, and I know that you did something for us collectively. So thank you both. let me do these couple things, and then I'll give a couple final words. In terms of next steps, and if you do need any further support from me, you can always go to jeffreyvandyke.com. That's jeffreyvandyk.com, and get in touch with me through that. You can also go to support@jeffreyvandyke.com and be in touch with my team. I do a webinar once a month on finding your tribe, which is really about understanding the who your work is meant for and how to connect with them. And so if you're interested in going to that webinar, you can go to tribalmarketing.biz. And I do a webinar every single Thursday. So you can join us there. And that's really about how to express the truth of your work into an audience that's hungry for it and ready to join you and buy. So that you can go to tribalmarketing.biz. Also, if you want to share tonight's journey with anybody else, you can go to my YouTube page, and I will send out the recording of tonight probably tomorrow. So you can go to jeffreyvandyke.com, sign up, make sure you're on my list if you're not already, and you'll get an email with a recording from tonight. Those are all housed on my YouTube page, and those are free, and you can share them with other people, which I encourage you to do. So if you know other people that are on this journey and want to be part of this conversation, share it. This is really something I do as an act of service, as an act of love, to further this conversation for us collectively about expanding our service in the world. The last thing I meant to say is whether you're here in person or live streaming or watching the recording, I normally don't always say this, but I'm really being told there's at least one of you that I'm supposed to potentially work with privately. And I do some private works, both in VIP half days and full days, as well as 3 and 6 month VIP intensives. And so if there's something in this conversation tonight that's poking at you, maybe even making you go, ugh! But you know there's something there for you, send a message to support@jeffreyvandyke.com. Let them know, hey, I'm interested in some deeper work with Jeffrey, and we'll be in touch with you about next steps. Okay. So final things. On some level, on the big, broad level, applied faith is about surrender, right? Sure, great. That's the obvious one. But I think sometimes the real lesson is small, not necessarily huge. And from what I see tonight, the real lesson, the takeaway for me, is seeing how there's always a next step. And that the real way we prevent ourselves from applying our faith is oftentimes by saying, I don't know the how. Right? And we do that by making the how bigger than the next step. We make the how like, I don't know how to build a house. I guess I can't have a house. Right? Instead of like, oh, do I know how to dig for a foundation? First step. How do I learn how to do that? Okay, now I have a foundation. What's the next step after that? Oh, I have to pour some concrete into it. Okay, I can take care of that. Next, right? There's always a next step. I heard recently, and I don't know who told me this, but that overwhelm isn't not knowing what to do, it's not knowing what to do next. I know that's true for me. And I think it's also one of the ways we keep ourselves from applying our faith. That we go, I don't know what to do. I don't know the how. It's really, I don't know, I'm here's the words that are coming. I'm unwilling to ask myself what's next. That's really what you're saying when you say I don't know how. You're saying I'm unwilling to ask myself what's my very next step. Because if you ask yourself that, you will put yourself squarely into action, either easily or with some resistance. And then you know what the next step is there, which is to work on the resistance and then find what's next. But it's really about getting it out of. It's so interesting. Oftentimes my talks are about what's the big, bold, grand vision and how do you do that? And tonight it's really, yeah, that, but then shrink it down. Like, what was that movie where the people go into the shrink machine and they get like this little big? What's that? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Yeah. It's like the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids version of a global calling, right? We got to put it in the shrink machine and go, what's the small, tiny, granular next step? And then get honest about, is that easy? Can I take it? And if so, great. And if I have stuff around it, okay, well, there's my next step, to work through that stuff and then take that next step. And we went through the 4 stages of that, of what do I already know? What's my fear about taking that step? And what does it tell me about what the resistance is and what sort of the material is there? Third, what's the wound that tracks back to? And fourth, how do I welcome that wound back so that fifth, I can get back into action, right? That's the mechanism around it. And lastly, normally at this point I do sort of a preacher, go forth, serve the Lord kind of thing, right? My benediction, because I grew up in a Pentecostal church. But what I'm hearing is, go have fun. Go have fun with it. Don't make it so big, right? Make it small and have fun with it. Go play. Be creative. Follow the impulse. Don't know where it's going. Go down the yellow brick road and be curious about where it's going to lead you. That's when life starts to move, and that's when you have joy stepping into your calling. So with that, go have fun. Thank you all so much for being here. Have a great night.